Well, I've just returned from a very exciting trip to Honduras, my first time there, where myself and Anderson and Nadu, our co-workers from Colombia, joined me, and we trained about 205 to 10 pastors and leaders in 2 cities in 3 different locations. It was very exciting. Here's a quick picture of me interviewing one of the pastors to see how well we taught and if he was ready to reteach our 4 questions that allow the Christian community to meet the crisis of abortion with the gospel of life. I've come home with a very bad cold. I spent yesterday in bed, and I'll probably take a nap again this afternoon. And it reminds me that at 67, these trips drain me in ways that they didn't seem to drain me 10, 11, 12 years ago when I was going to China 4 times a year and other places. But that's the ministry. And Paul often talked about the cost of the ministry. He described it in biblical terms. He said, I was poured out for the gospel. And that's interesting language. As a drink offering, Paul said, like just taking an offering and just pouring it out over the altar and letting it be spent out. That's what it's like to serve the Lord in many, many places and at times of our life. There is a sacrificial part to it, and I think that it comes down to us feeling a sense of calling. Over the years, we've experienced not only those times of stress and being drained, but just some downright wacky and weird experiences. For example, one time we were in China, and we flew into an airport, and I went for a cup of coffee outside the airport, and I came back and found out the airport had been closed. There was a big lock and chain on the door, and my wife was inside there reading and didn't know that they closed the airport. I called her on her cell phone, and she came over, and you can see in this image, she's peeking out the doorway slot, wondering how she's ever going to get out of there. That was a weird and wacky moment in China. They closed the airport, and we had to wait till about 5 or 6 in the afternoon before the staff came back to the airport, and we flew from that airport back to Shanghai or Chengdu or wherever we were going to. I can't remember. Another time we went to train. They provided some housing for us in a kind of a sensitive area, and we went to the apartment, and it was about 40 to 45 degrees in there. And so you can see in this picture that we are dressed in all of our winter clothes like we're going skiing or something, and we're actually getting ready for bed and just trying to laugh about how cold it was in the room. These are some of the things that you come across in missions. I know my friend Mark Nicholson, he often talks about how he would go off with the nomadic peoples and leave his computer in the refrigerator to keep it warm. That's how cold his house would get when he went off to travel with the nomads up in the highlands of China. And another time, his car broke down in Cuba, traveling from one city to the next. And they had no electrical system within the car. And as they started to get to drive it again, he only had his iPhone light. And the little light on his iPhone was the headlight for their car. So you really do experience all kinds of crazy things when you travel and serve the Lord in this way in world missions. Most of them are amusing and not dangerous. But there are times where you do face certain amounts of dangers. And I tell people, there's no safer place to be than the will of God. But the will of God is not safe. Here's an example. Here's the Apostle Paul talking about all the things that he experienced in doing what he was certain was the will of God for his life. That he was whipped 5 times with the lash on his back. 3 times he says he was beaten with rods. Once I was stoned. 3 times I was shipwrecked. A night and a day I was adrift at sea. on frequent journeys in danger from rivers, danger from robbers, danger from my own people, danger from Gentiles, danger in the city, danger in the wilderness, danger at sea, danger from false brothers, in toil and hardship through many a sleepless night, in hunger and thirst, often without food, in cold and exposure. Doing the will of God is a dangerous thing. God protects us, but not from danger and not from exposure to hardship and difficulties. This is what I love about the gospel. It's rooted in the real world. It's dangerous. And we are particularly called to be a cross-bearing people. And I encourage you in these hard times, don't be a coward. Live dangerously in the will of God. We are particularly cross-bearers for child-bearers. And if you're a part of Passion Life and you're involved in what we're doing, if you're contributing to what we're doing, if you're praying for what we're doing, then you are a part of a movement of cross-bearers for child-bearers. And it actually changes the way you think and live your life. And I just want to encourage you to live a life that responds to the will of God and is not afraid or always looking for the comfortable place in your life. To keep the will of God often means to go into dangerous places, as Paul suggests with his own life. The safest place that we can ever be is the will of God, but it's not a safe place. It's full of dangers, but God is the God of all comfort in such places. And one of the comforts that we get is to see the fruit of our work as we go out, as this one picture shows of this young mother that was rescued out of absolutely desperate conditions. And to see her baby live and the witness of the gospel go forth, all of which requires effort. So let us be together resolved to live out our lives as cross bearers for child bearers and without regret. God bless.